Depression and addiction look like opposites. One makes you feel nothing. The other makes you feel too much. But in reality, they are deeply connected, like two shadows cast by the same wound. Well, depression is the descent into darkness, and addiction is the attempt to escape it. Both are reactions to a soul that has lost its light. If you understand why these two feed each other, then you understand the key to healing them. Not just symptom management, but true transformation. And this is exactly what we're going to do in this video. So let's start with the psychological layer, and then we go deeper into the shamanic truth that most people never see. So, what is the psychological truth behind the darkness of depression? Depression is not just sadness. It is a system shut down. And why does the system decide to shut down? Well, because there is too much pain, or because many soul parts went missing, like too many soul parts. Let me explain that. Psychologically, depression is what happens when the emotional pain becomes too heavy for the psyche to hold. So the mind, what does the mind do? The mind does what it must do. It turns off the lights, which means your dopamine level drops, your motivation collapses, your emotions freeze, your thoughts become super heavy, and your body kind of move into a survival mode. And depression is your mind saying, I can't carry any more pain. And here are the psychological causes that we see over and over again in depression cases. Chronic emotional overwhelm, unresolved trauma, childhood wounds and neglect, repeated heartbreak or abandonment, shame and unworthiness, powerlessness, disconnection and loss, and of course also feeling unseen, unheard, and unsupported. Well, this is where psychology and shamanism meet, because those are exactly the same triggers that cause soul loss, except for accidents. Accidents can also cause soul loss, and maybe in some cases it can also cause depression. So is it a coincidence that the psychological causes of depression are exactly the same as the shamanic causes for soul loss? No, it is not a coincidence. This is the missing piece that psychology rarely talks about. So I have never seen a client who came into my practice with deep depression who still had all of their soul parts present, not single one. All clients with deep depression have a lot of soul parts missing. Why does it happen? Well, when life becomes too dark, the soul, which is pure light, pure divine light, simply cannot stay fully inside the body. It withdraws, it hides, it leaves to protect itself, to protect you. And this is called soul loss. And if you want to understand soul loss better, then watch this video. And extreme soul loss creates the inner emptiness that depression feels like. And then the question, what comes first, depression or soul loss? Both. It is a cycle. It happens like this. First, a wound happens, and then a soul part leaves because the pain from this wound is just too much. When your soul part leaves, your inner light collapses. When your inner light collapses, this opens the door to depression. So depression begins. When depression begins, the emptiness grows. And when your emptiness grows, what happens? More soul parts withdraw. This is not a linear process. This is kind of like a spiral. And what does this all have to do with addiction? Well, where there is soul loss, there is always a high risk of addiction, because addiction is what people reach for when the inner light disappears. So imagine that your soul parts go, you feel the emptiness, and you start to try to fill this emptiness with your substance, your addiction. Of course, it doesn't work. And as I explain in my book, Addiction Free, A Shamanic Path to Healing and Lasting Freedom, addiction is not about the substance. It is about the feeling that the substance promises you. And every addiction, no matter the form, carries a hidden promise. Here are some examples. Alcohol will promise you, I will calm your storm. Cannabis, I will quiet your mind. Cocaine, I will give you energy and power. Shopping, I will give you abundance. Work, I will give you identity. Food, I will give you comfort, and so on. In my book, I have a huge list. I prepared a huge list with the meaning or the hidden promises of each kind of addiction. So it is like this. Depression creates the emptiness. Addiction fills it, of course, only temporarily. And then depression says, I don't feel anything. And addiction says, here, let me make you feel something. This is why addiction and depression almost always travel together. One opens the door to the other. And we could say that addiction is the search for stolen soul light. And here are now some other layers of depression that only a few people talk about. Number one, ancestral darkness and family curses. I have worked with entire families where every single person suffered from depression. Not because of genetics, of course, it's also shown in the genetics, but the root cause was a multi-generational curse or ancestral trauma field. Once the field was harmonized, people, like all family members, began to heal. They began to get better. There was just one case where one family member could not let go of his depression. Because sometimes, and here comes the number two, the second layer, depression becomes home. So sometimes the darkness becomes familiar and predictable and safe. And you know that healing will require change, responsibility, and truth. Staying depressed requires nothing. Some people cling to darkness because the light feels terrifying. They know that the journey to the other side will require a fight. So they just stay there where they are. Number three, depression can be a spiritual test. So depression often comes right before a breakthrough, before a new life, before a transformation that requires your full power, like your full soul power. It is the void before the birth or before the rebirth. And this is the soul asking you, can you find your own light again, even now? And not everyone says yes to this question. Some of them turn to addiction, others collapse, and only a few of them rise. Number four are entities and energetic attachments. Before we go on, remember to like this video and to subscribe to my channel. In this way, we can stay connected and it really supports my work. Alright, so a small percentage of depression is not psychological at all. It is caused by entities or heavy attachments feeding on a person's life force. Some symptoms are sudden emotional crashes, extreme hopelessness, feeling like taken over, thoughts that don't feel like your own, constant pullback into darkness. And you know, you can meditate all you want. If the darkness isn't yours, it won't leave until it is removed. Let's now talk about how addiction and depression lock together. Here's the mechanism. Soul loss creates emptiness. Depression deepens the emptiness. Then comes the addiction, and the addiction tries to fill the emptiness, temporarily, of course. And the soul retreats even more because of the addiction's shame and pain. And then when the more soul parts retreat, then more emptiness, more depression, and more addiction comes. And it becomes like a life loop. Not because the person is weak, but because many parts of their soul are missing. And healing depression and addiction requires working on both the psyche and the soul. First, the darkness that doesn't belong to you, like entities, curses, ancestral pain, must be removed so that the field becomes safe again. Only then can the missing soul parts return. Next, the nervous system must be rebuilt through breath, rhythm, grounding, and sunlight, nature, Pachamama. The emotions that are frozen in your energy field, they need to melt slowly. And the shame that fuels addiction must also melt, because shame keeps the soul parts out of the body. And very important, your inner fire, which means your purpose, your creativity, your truth, must be reignited. Your environment must change, because what stays the same keeps you stuck. And finally, connection. Depression heals through relationship, healthy relationships, and addiction softens in honesty, and soul loss reverses in love. If you want to heal these wounds at their root, the darkness, the soul loss, the addiction, the depression, you don't have to do it alone. Book a shamanic session with me or join one of my retreats. This work is deep, powerful, and life-changing, and you are ready for it. I wish you a wonderful journey to yourself.